I never thought I'd have a Vanna.
I'm even blonde to go with it.
I know. So I'll begin this journey with a story. In 1910, which was a number of years ago, a man was born in Berlin, Germany. He was Jewish, and as he began to grow up, he noticed that the Nazis were really organizing a lot of things for evil. And he noticed that his uncle was taken away, his uncle Alex was taken away to fight in the war. And this was his experience as he grew up. And it bothered him. He became curious. That curiosity turned into a pursuit of how he might be able to create something that would be organized for good in people rather than evil in people. And over time, the Nazis became stronger and stronger. And when he was in his early 20s, he had become obsessed with finding a way to create some kind of program, something to create more good. He went to law school, he studied a lot, he just immersed himself in this idea. He had a passion for finding out about what he was obsessed with, about how could we make things good rather than evil. I'm telling you this story because before I get into what I'm talking about today, which is the inner journey, I want you to know that this particular field of study is in a field all by itself. It's called the science of axiology, the science of value. This guy, who later, because he caught the attention of the Nazis, because he was speaking out against what they were doing, he was forced to leave Germany in 1932, and he was at a table with a number of other people, and they had some passports on the table, and the person leading the discussion said, "I have a passport here for Robert Hartman. Who is that?" And he said, "That's me." That's how this study of axiology that I'm going to be sharing with you got formed, and Robert Hartman is the man who brought it forward. He had a really, really tough life. I can't even imagine that I would be able to hold on to my passion for what I love doing if the circumstances were such like he was involved in, where he had nothing. He had no place to sleep. You know, he was like a homeless man, but his passion carried him forward. And there is so much about this topic that is relevant to us. I actually am thinking about starting another group just for the discussion of this topic. So if, as you're listening today, if this sparks an interest in you, just let me know that. But for right now, I'm going to just move forward and say that the the science of axiology, the science of value, was developed into a profile. This has over 60 or 70 years of research behind it. And I've printed out a printout of the summary, because what happens when we take a little test, a very simple test that cannot be fooled, and it tells us where our attention is and how we think. And when we know how we think, then we know more about how we make decisions. Because if I think I want to go out that door, you know, that's what happens first. I think about going out that door, and that's how we make any decision in our lives. And we can make better decisions when we focus on our assets, on our strengths, rather than on our biases. Our biases can become liabilities in our lives. Now, as you look at this printout, if you'll notice the 100s, those are this person's assets. If that person will learn to live from their assets, their lives will get much better because they'll be able to make better decisions. Now, normally in our lives, do you think that our assets are what drive our lives? Just, what do you
No.
imagine?
I don't think so.
No, I think the other one,
What do we find is talked about more frequently? More frequently, what's talked about is what's not going right, or who's not doing something the way they ought to be doing it. You know, if I could just, I'm gonna pick on you, Chris, because I read your description on the Meetup this morning, because you just registered, and it said you'd like to have 5 to 6 paid speaking engagements a month at your intended fee. So just inside of you, think about, what do you imagine is keeping you from being able to achieve that goal? Just think about it inside. And just do with that whatever you want. But here we have this person who has a lot of assets, a lot of 100%ers. And each one of those 100%ers has what are called centering questions. Have you ever noticed when somebody asks you a question, or when you ask yourself a question, how it can shift your thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you're saying yes.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more
Sure,
about what
well,
your experience
I'm
of?
kind of smiling inside because I literally just did my video blog before I came here, and it was on kind of this topic. So the distinction that I made is that great leaders ask themselves, how do I do it versus can I do it? And so just a shift in words
Right.
has a tremendous impact in terms of how we look at struggle or challenges, and or even good things in our lives.
Right. That's a great distinction. Will, you were nodding also. Do you have something you'd like to say?
I think for me, it's you talk about these values. For me, it's also about our beliefs, and there's so many of us walk around with these limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, whether they're ingrained in us as children or young adults or whatever. and we have that language in our head, I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, I'm not smart enough, oh, nobody will wanna hear me, I don't have anything of value to say. I can have all those things, or I can really turn that around, through having different dialogue, both internally as well as externally, and changing what those belief systems are.
Thank you for that, because you're leading me where I want to go. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So here, notice here, valuing your assets, you'll notice that this is not a 100%. It's a 59%. Another thing that you can notice is that there's an arrow over on this side pointing that way. Also, we see lots of gray and black here. And it ties into what you're talking about, Will. You know, why would anybody want to listen to me? Just that example. So all of this gray and black is lack of awareness. And when the arrow is pointed to the left, we are undervaluing our assets. So now, if that could be happening, and one of our assets is valuing ourself, what we could say, or the question we could ask ourselves is, if I hear myself saying, well, they don't want to hire me anyway, what do I know? You know, I don't have a PhD, I don't have a master's, any of those kind of phrases, then because valuing myself is an asset, I can say, what do I know about my ability to grow and become better? And that can start to lift me out of that place. Does how I am feeling, thinking, or acting right now support who I truly aspire to be? And if I'm saying those things, it's not who I aspire to be. How can I use my gifts and past experiences to bring greater value to this moment? That would be another question. These are called centering questions. And this person has so much going for them that we don't know, but likely they might not be using to get where they want to go. I'm noticing here that the person enjoys who they are, they value themselves, they enjoy what they do, they value what they do, but for some reason, they're not living on purpose. So I'd be curious to know why that person has all these assets and still doesn't seem to be living out their purpose. What else could be going on here? They're not valuing their assets. So maybe maybe they want to get into the speaking world. And maybe they're in a comfort zone. Maybe they're very comfortable where they are. We're just guessing right now with what information we have. But when we talk about being in the speaking business, what's going on inside has a direct impact on what happens on the outside. The speaking skills are very important, and the other outer skills, you know, that having a good website, having a great mailing list, having opportunities to speak, all of that. And yet, if we're not on purpose or not valuing our assets, then that's where we need to put some attention and gain some awareness. Does anything make sense here? Does it what comes up for you? What do you have to say? Suzanne?
Well, I know that public speaking is one of the biggest fears that people have, and, you know, like you were saying, it can come from a range of belief patterns.
Right.
And it's not just, I'm not good enough, it's got tagged on to other things, and your historical patterns of what you behaved as, and all of that just comes into the speaking arena. And you don't know how to, I think the biggest problem is that attunement to someone in an audience, because if you're thinking of yourself the whole time, and you're self-conscious or not believing, how are you gonna attune to an audience? And I think there's a lot of belief patterns.
That's a great question. You had something?
Well, I was gonna add on kind of what Suzanne said, is that as speakers, if we are not congruent with ourselves, even though we may have great content, great stage presence, great slides, great tonality, whatever, an audience will pick up on that if there's
Yeah.
incongruence.
Because of the energy.
Because of the energy, exactly. And I guess the question that I had, Judy, is in a perfect world, if someone was 100% congruent in themselves, would every one of those be at 100? Is that possible, or is
It's
that not?
possible.
Okay.
Yes, it's possible. This profile has 6.4 quadrillion ways it can print out. And that's for each, the world view and the self view. And so, you know, when you're having something happen in your business and maybe you were expecting a meeting planner to call you back, and that meeting planner didn't call you back, because there's so many facets of this whole thing. You might not be at peace. This being at peace is a really big one for many, many of us. And being at peace, the arrow is pointing to the right, which means we overvalue being at peace. And frequently, it is, why didn't they do what they said they were going to do? So the meeting planner has promised to call you back by a certain date. You've got a hold on that meeting date, and something happened. And so then there's an opportunity, because we can get upset, or, I mean, maybe that's the speaking engagement that's supposed to pay the rent this month, you know? Who knows? And so we want to get out of this being at peace feeling of, you know, why didn't they do that? And think about maybe valuing others. I'm not sure if I have a printout for valuing others here. But, you know, something, and go to the centering questions from that particular measurement that would help us get out of this place of feeling frustrated and angry because they didn't call us back. So what happens when we become involved in this kind of work, it's an opportunity for a tremendous amount of awareness in each of the areas where we don't have the awareness that we need to have it be one of our assets. Like, I'm looking at dealing with uncertainty, and I'm thinking about if that did happen, that a person didn't get a call back from the meeting planner and they were upset at me because of the uncertainty of paying the rent or something like that, and it could ruin their whole day. What else comes to mind as you look at this?
Well, the one thing that was coming to mind for me and first of all, was another awareness that how I allow this to happen in my own life. But number two, on how when the upset is occurring in those two cases, it's because whoever is being measured here is allowing something on the outside to impact the inside versus the other way around.
Yes, yes. So it's important for us to get control of what's going on in the inside. And asking questions is the way that I found that helps me the most.
And asking the empowering questions.
Yeah, how
Yes.
questions,
Yeah.
not why.
Right.
Why do they never call me back? You know, why am I always at the end of the list?
Right,
Yeah.
right, not those questions. Yes, yes. Now, let's see about the seeking fulfillment here. That's again, has an arrow to the left, and one of the things that I'd like to share with you is that even though this is an 83 and this is a 59, at certain times, exploring possibilities, which in this case, this person overvalues, could have more of an impact on their decisions than this living purposefully. Exploring possibilities, what I think of here are shiny bright objects. Have you ever had that experience with a shiny bright object taking you off purpose?
That's why they call them shiny bright objects.
Yeah,
That's
really.
right. They get your attention, take you off purpose. Now, another thing that I'd like you to just be aware of and why questions are important. Here's openness to advice and opinions. Now, this person overvalues being open to advice and opinions. So this person might be someone who is a follower, who really doesn't take charge of their life. But what we found in all of the profiles that have been done, that over 93% of us are undervalue openness to advice and opinions. So none of us like to be told what to do. We work much better when we're asked questions and have the opportunity to give our input about what choice we want to make. Kathy, in your experience with nonviolent communication, is any of what I'm saying tying into the work that you do?
You know, it is. The piece about curiosity. There's a shift, like what really struck me here is like the shifting out of the place of evaluating and saying, I already know something, which is applying to what you're saying right now around advice, but also just about how am I being here in the world? If I think I already know, if I'm busy judging and I'm evaluating, I don't have a kind of curiosity that's open. And when we have curiosity, then I can learn more about other people. If I have something going on myself and I get curious, then I can find out more about that instead of judging and saying, oh, I'm just this, or oh, you're just that. We get curious in a different way, like what's actually going on here? And that leads us into a depth of awareness and presence that has to do with usually some deep core value that's really perked up and alive in us.
Right.
So it's this attention to shifting out of judgment, evaluation, and moving into curiosity that's really standing out for me.
And what I'd like to share with you when you bring up the word judgment, Kathy. Sometimes when a person treats us other than the way we'd like to be treated, we think it is who they are. Like this meeting planner who didn't call us back. You know, she's not very responsible. She's probably new on the job. Heaven only knows what we think we know about her. But it really doesn't have anything to do with who she is. It's where she is at that moment. Because when different situations come into our lives, we can be in a place where we aren't regularly. During the time that Joe was sick, when he passed away, after he passed away, and all of January, I was in some very different places. It was just where I was. Now I'm getting more into who I choose to show up as. And the who, which is everything in this column, is all based on intrinsic values. Every human being, every living thing is intrinsically valuable. We are all one of a kind. Like I said about the way the profile prints out, there's 6.4 quadrillion ways it can print out. So every individual is unique. I have a lot of friends, but until I met Alex, we have a friendship that's indescribable. And we really treasure that. Alex is 31 years old and I'm 78 years old. And we get along like this. It's really incredible. We have a mentor, mentee, a daughter, mother, assistant, master, all kinds of different relationships. But we think our life is complete with the people we know, and then we meet someone, and that person is just such a gift, such a unique individual in our lives. Because we're all unique, and sometimes you meet that person who just, everything just clicks. So we want to remember that the intrinsic, who we are, has the most value. Everything in this column is extrinsic. It's the roles we play. It's about money, material things. Extrinsic value is less valuable than intrinsic value. This column is all systemic. It's all the rules that either we learned as we were children, we learned in whatever church we were part of, what the government says, or the rules we've made up for ourselves. I can't go outside, it's too cold today. That's a rule we've made up. Or Marie said, I made a commitment. That's the reason I'm here. I made a commitment to everybody here, and I made a commitment to myself. That was the rule that she made up. And some rules are good. Rules provide structure to our lives. Like I'm going to find a way to book those 5 to 6 speaking engagements a month at my intended fee. I'm going to keep asking questions and meeting people and doing all the things necessary to create the awareness that I need to make that happen. Being in that curious, open mode. Did you learn anything today that's valuable to your business?
Yeah, to be more confident. I mean, just looking at the list there, I mean, I didn't anticipate anything.
Right.
Coming here, but it is very, educational, and so I do like it.
Great. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't, it is, I may, come to several others, if that's okay.
You're always welcome, absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely. What have you learned today, Will?
I love this. I'm gonna check this out. I think this is really cool stuff. And you know, I mentioned that I put together a program, and part of that program is really looking at ourselves internally and our belief systems that we carry. And a lot of times they are very negative and control so much of who we are on the outside, and we're not even aware of it. So I love this as a tool. And then you said something, and I love this, I wrote it down, and I will steal it.
Just quote me.
But shifting from judgment to curiosity that's awesome. That is awesome. Because that's what we have to do. Because we will judge ourselves and we will judge others. But shift that into, let me ask some questions about that and be curious about that. So that's great. Yeah, thank you.
You know, I'm thinking about something that I have on my computer monitor. 1 minute of anger or judgment, whatever, can suppress our immune system for 4 to 5 hours. 1 minute of laughter boosts the immune system for 24 hours. Yes, right.
Couldn't resist.
No, it's a good thing, right? We need to remind ourselves, because it doesn't take much for 1 minute of laughter, and boy, if that can boost my immune system for 24 hours, I'm ahead of the game, you know? Because of the various chemicals it creates, and
My
Yes.
good friend Craig Zablocki, who's a professional speaker, quotes the stat that the average 7-year-old laughs 400 times per day, and the average adult, we get 7.
Oh.
I just literally listened to it this morning.
Oh, that's
So,
wow.
7 times the average adult.
I mean, just one little thing like that creates such an awareness, you know, like lighten up.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
if I may, the other thing that's really, and this has really been great, Judy, because this has been wonderful in terms of anchoring some things that I, well, it's always funny, I think the things that we teach and we speak about are the things we need to most learn, so thank you, thank you. So, but what I'm realizing is that when I have times in my business in particular, like I'm experiencing now, where I want to generate business, and I get really focused on the activity, which is not a bad thing, but I can do a better job of being mindful of how I'm coming to those activities from an intrinsic standpoint. So if I'm going to those activities from a standpoint of fear, I'm really spinning my wheels. But if I'm coming from those from a place of confidence, of lightheartedness, of faith, and I do those activities, I'm gonna get much greater results. So it's where I'm coming from that's important, not necessarily what I'm doing.
Because this is the doing here.
Right,
Being.
right.
This is the being.
Yeah.
Beings versus
Yeah.
doing.
And we're not human doings, right? We're
No,
human beings.
no. You know, even though that's popular opinion, that we're human doings, we're not. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Yes.
Or a couple. So just just some comments. I've taken this test or this profile, and just a great reminder, like the goal of being able to leave here feeling more confident, and usually I am pretty confident in what I'm doing and who I am and how I'm showing up in the world for the people that I'm around on a day-to-day basis. And then some days I just get knocked off, and it's because these biases are tricky. They sneak up on you, you know, like you're not paying attention, and it's and I work with Judy as in my mentee role with her and her mentor role with me in one of our aspects of our relationship, and I'll be talking to her, and then she'll just sneakily ask me a centering question because she has my profile on her computer, and then bam, I'm right back in it, like, and I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, just, you know, looking at your profile. I'm like, oh yeah, it's really good. And an example the other day, I have FOMO, fear of missing out. I want to do everything, and I want to be all things to all people.
What's that called?
FOMO, F-O-M-O. I am a FOMO. I really am. Fear of missing out. And it does not serve me. And Judy asked me the other day, and this isn't one of my centering questions, but it probably is in a roundabout way. How many gardens can you tend to? And I thought, oh, not a lot. Not a lot that are going to produce any harvest, you know, and it really helped me recenter and learn to say no to things. So I just as a, just to highlight what Judy's talking about and who Judy is as a person, and then this program that she stands behind, it's very powerful. So I recommend it to everyone on the planet, and including everyone in here. So it's great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd forgotten about our garden conversation.
Oh, I haven't. I'm asking myself every day now, like, wait a minute, I'm not gardening tending to that garden anymore, and let it go.
Great.
Well, I was gonna ask, so similar to like Myers-Briggs, DISC, and all of those, but does this change over time based on where you're at with what's going on, unlike the personality profiles and all those things, right?
And thank you for that question. I'll get to you in just a moment, Kathy. That was why I told that story at the beginning. I want you to know this is not like Myers-Briggs or DISC or any of those. Those are personality profiles. And this isn't a field all by itself. This is scientifically and mathematically based. And that's a language, I don't know much about science or math. I'm more of a feeling person, but I can show you some things if you'd be interested, Will, that will help you to understand more. But this is in a field all by itself.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you to repeat the name of that field. You said it's the science of something-ology?
Axiology.
Axiology. And my phone didn't like that word, and it changed it, so.
Right,
Yes.
axiogenics. See, it says axiogenics.
Oh, no,
Way too small.
Axiogenics is a company
Okay.
that, and you'll find a lot of information if you put in Robert Hartman, all of that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Can I, if you would like to be on our mailing list for future classes and events that won't be on speakers in Colorado, if you just complete one of those and just give us your contact information. Thank you so much for being here. But, you know, the other thing, I love learning. And the other thing about this profile is it goes so deep. You can learn so much about yourself. And there's so much here to help us if we focus on the centering questions. And I'll give a couple of these you can pass around and look. These are printouts. When you have your complete profile, you have a printout of every one of the measurements, and the central questions for that measurement are on there. So I like things where I can never get complete in terms of my learning.
Mm-hmm.
So how much does this cost?
Do what?
How much does this cost?
I'm going to bring a sheet around, and you can look at the various ways if you'd like to go deeper into this, that you can get involved. We'll stop now. It's about 1:05. We have 25 minutes to do additional networking, ask questions, and I've got a couple of things to distribute. One of the things that I wanted to give you is the